This is Dr. Kara. She's in Connecticut right now. She's an amazing naturopathic doctor and an acupuncturist, and has been working with fertility patients for over 18 years clinically. She's got a ton of experience. And this is a conversation that's near and dear to her because she experienced several miscarriages in her fertility journey. And so what we're trying to talk today about is miscarriage and how you can recover from miscarriage, and also what do you need to know. Many people are worried about having a miscarriage as they're starting their fertility process. So we just want to talk about miscarriage a little bit and illuminate some of those things. So over to you.
So this is something that comes up for us both in practice, and Dr. Hillary is really good at talking to people about the emotional impact. So she's going to be really great because she has a strong history with psychology. So I think it's really important to think about, myself and the many times this happened and kind of how the process was. And so that's kind of what we designed the talk around. And the first thing was, this is grief and it's absolutely terrible, and sort of, are there strategies while recognizing how devastating it is for you or your couple? And so I think jumping into that first, just touching on it, and then going into the causes and maybe some things you might be able to do would be a good place to start. So I was going to pass that to you, Hillary.
So there's a couple things that are really important about miscarriage and the process of, if you're a woman who has been through a miscarriage or multiple miscarriages, then what happens is typically these women become a little bit gun shy, and the instinct is to go within and become quite private. It's a very retreating process. Many women are not sharing that they're pregnant yet. Most miscarriages happen quite early, and then obviously there are some late stage miscarriages that are devastating, but we're talking a little bit more about sort of the general early miscarriages. And often women are not sharing with their friends or family that they're even pregnant yet, because it's also new. So sometimes when they experience a loss, they tend to be quite isolated. They're already isolating. And sometimes they're sharing that with their partner. Obviously, they're in that together. But sometimes that partner, especially if it's a male partner, has often a very hard time relating to the woman's experience. So one thing that we're trying to kind of create is a community for women to kind of share their fertility journey. So the day you're pregnant, that you could join our group of our Facebook group and be in community. So if you're experiencing the loss, you're also surrounded in community. Because I think Kara and many women, part of the thing that happens is it's a sort of a life in secret. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Kara?
Yeah. So it's hard because you don't want to start announcing to people when you're before 3 months or whatever you decide that you're pregnant. And there might be something behind that, actually, because most of the losses happen in those first 3 months. And it seems like once you get to 15 weeks, the chance of miscarriage goes down dramatically. So so I was just in this situation over and over again where I didn't really have many people. I was kind of young too, so I didn't really have many people to get to talk to about it. And so that was really hard. And I always say to people, this is the worst, most heartbreaking experience for you, but you don't sit down at the dinner party and say, oh yeah, I had a miscarriage this week. It's just not anything that happens in a group of people. But if you did sit down at the dinner table and say that, guaranteed someone else will say, oh yeah, I had that happen to me too. That was awful, or it was confusing, and all those things. So if you find a woman friend or a family member and sort of open up about it, you might find a good ally to talk to, and that just makes it so much better. And it's a much, much nicer experience, even though you're still in this scared piece of like, is this ever going to happen for me? Is there something wrong with me? Was there something I did that was wrong? So then it's sort of, you worry about, was it the exercise? Was it the lifting? I was moving some furniture. I was doing this or that. And you start to sort of go in this like circle in your head of, it must have been something I did, when in reality, most of it is just genetic. I mean, the chromosomes have been sitting in your ovaries since before you were born. So just like anything, it's going to degrade over time. And we like to use sort of farming terms and gardening terms because it really does relate here. So the ovaries hold your eggs, just like seeds. So if you've ever worked with any plants, seeds only last a certain amount of years and then the quality goes down. And so if you have a bunch of basil seeds, for instance, and you try and germinate them, or you try and grow basil plants, the first year, a bunch of them are going to come up. And then like 2 years down the line, it's like 2/3 of the plants will come up, so the seed quality just goes down over time. It's the same with us humans. So I think that's an interesting piece because we can work on that. We can actually work on the quality there. And so if we start going through the causes of miscarriage, then maybe we can kind of address and give some ideas, because it's nice, I find, to meet even something where you just don't know exactly what happened and you're so worried about it, with, now I know what the things are that could have caused this. And I know that maybe there's a few things I might be able to do. So I like that kind of approach of like, let's just do some learning around it.
So we almost can consider miscarriage a normal part of the birthing process. Obviously, less risky when you're young and it's coming easy, and more or less tumultuous, and or more tumultuous when you've done a lot of IVF or fertility work and that's the outcome, right? So there's this continuum of stress that happens for a woman. And we know that women get pregnant who are in their highest vibration. We have a webinar where we discuss raising your vibration, and we always try to talk about women being kind of their happiest self. So part of the journey of miscarriage is, like Kara said, Kara likes to know kind of what her risk factors are, what she could do to improve. That's sort of who she is, and I love that about her. She's great, and that's what makes her a great doctor. And then I want to come in around and say, well, what's all the healing that also needs to happen in order to kind of release and spiritually move on? Because some people experience it as quite a dramatic loss. And the very first part that we were speaking of is that isolation that can happen, or sometimes the dependence on your partner who can't quite feel the same. And a woman might say, but this is happening to us. But the man isn't having hormone changes, isn't often having as much, not always, but isn't often having the dreams, the thinking about the pregnancy clothes or what stroller she's going to buy or how the room's going to be. It tends to be a bit of a disconnect. So we want to talk about ways of healing. So that's what we're going to cover today in the webinar. Just sort of like, what's some of the science? What are some of the risk factors? What are some of the things that we can do? And then what's some of the process of healing if you experienced this kind of loss?
Yeah.
So take it away, scientist.
Go away with some of the to-dos. Okay, so age is probably one of the biggest factors involved. And if you look at the statistics, the older you are, so if you're in your later 40s, your chance of miscarriage is quite high. If you're 40 years old, your chance of miscarriage is double a 20-year-old. So that's that kind of age factor, which is something that people get upset about, but actually you can try and combat it with diet and exercise and all kinds of things that might actually help. So that's not like, oh, I'm too old, this is never going to happen for me. It's just, it's going to be a little bit harder, right? So you might expect to have more miscarriages if you are trying later in life. Obesity, number 2, that we think about. And that's an interesting one because obesity is on so many risk factors. And I think one of it, or one piece of it, is that having extra weight decreases circulation to the reproductive organs, so that can be a problem. It also changes the dynamic of what happens in those ovaries and in the uterus. So there might be blood sugar regulation problems, there might be hormone problems because the extra weight kind of acts as a hormone disruptor itself. So that is an interesting sort of risk factor and something that you might be able to do something about. Smoking's obvious.
Sorry, that you can absolutely do something about, making lifestyle changes, making strides for changing your diet. And that's something that we would really, that there's so much great information about fertility diets and blood sugar regulation, and that are helpful for dropping weight. So if that is a concern of yours, if obesity is something that you struggle with, please, please, please reach out to us at Cultivate Fertility. We have options and resources to help you with that.
Then there's sort of the toxins of choice, which is sort of the smoking, the alcohol. We know those things are associated with increased risk of miscarriage, so you just don't want to do those things. That's sort of obvious. And then there's the chronic health conditions, which I think I talk to a lot of women who have maybe one or maybe two miscarriages, and they get worried about this. Like, do I have something wrong with me that no one can figure out? Because this just doesn't feel right. Like, I eat a healthy lifestyle. I don't have high stress. I just don't understand why this is happening to me. And so that one's interesting, and you might have to look a little further at it. But really, the bottom line is just do everything you can to be the healthiest you possibly can, get your body in the best shape possible to try and get pregnant. And that's one approach that tends to work for some people. So that's a good one. And then all kinds of hormone disorders that you may or may not know about. And the other one would be chemicals. So certain chemicals are not really good for miscarriage risk. Like one I'll just throw out there, pesticide residues. So maybe looking at an organic diet. And certain jobs have certain exposures to chemicals that can potentially increase miscarriage risk. So you just want to rule out all those things, think about what you could do for those. And that would probably be a good approach if you're a person whose grieving process and whose coping with stress mechanisms is about what can I do. So I like to go through those with people.
And I just want to make space for, if you are you're on this webinar live, please ask any questions that you have in the chat box. I'm watching it, and we're here to answer any questions. We would love discussion. So if you have any specific questions, please write in now. We would love to hear from you. The pesticide thing is a very interesting concept, and I guess I'm circling it back to sort of our offerings, because I think one of the things that women feel is a little powerless when miscarriages happen, like, why me? What happened? What's next? And sometimes doing like a pause, a detox after healing, after a miscarriage, taking some days to really kind of heal and recenter and reset. We have a 30-day detox that really goes much deeper into education about pesticide exposure in your homes, on your body, in your body products, eating organic foods, things that you can do to just reduce burden. So if you are someone who's suffered from a miscarriage or potentially recurrent miscarriages, that might be a great, what can I do now, proactively to get your body in, to try to kind of clear your body of some of these things before giving it a go again. I'd love to talk about the emotional aspects of miscarriage. And again, some people are on this webinar are looking at it because they want to know, what can I do to avoid it? And some people have had a miscarriage and are sort of potentially struggling with it. So what we discussed before was that it makes a lot of sense to try to come out to somebody. It's like a coming out often, like, you know, whoever it is in your life, a friend, anybody that you know has had a miscarriage, somebody that can really relate and help you and kind of midwife you through the process is often really helpful. a spiritual advisor if you have some, but to really honor the fact that it's a real grief. It's a word that's thrown around kind of sloppily. Like, oh, you had a miscarriage. Well, like 50%, 50% of miscarriages are chromosomal abnormalities, and it's totally fine, and get back on it. Or, oh, miscarriages are really common. Early miscarriages are common. And, it's like, sort of like, okay, well then am I supposed to just be okay? But often when you're like alone in the dark at night, or even driving, or it's coming in, it's like, it's not okay. Like, this feels like a loss. It felt like I had a double line on a pregnancy test, and I was really excited. And then all of a sudden my plans are revisited or immediate change. And sometimes
one of the sad things that we hear from people is then that they don't trust their own bodies. You know what I mean? It's like this lack of trust in your own reproductive body, and that's so upsetting. So there has to be some way to somehow get back on okay, this happened, what can we do now, and how to move forward from it, because it's an intense disappointment, but it doesn't mean that your body's not going to work.
Sometimes it means that your body is working. Right. Often it means that there was a chromosomal abnormality. That baby was never going to be able to grow into term, because this is like such a miracle that anybody even has a baby. Way when you look at it scientifically, it's like an unbelievable event. And so there's so many different factors that can happen. And most often it's because your body is working for you, and it's saying, oh, this isn't viable, and it's getting rid and moving on through the next. And so, but we just want to help give you kind of access to support and to help. So one thing that I always work hard on, whether it's like for my own kind of anxiety or depression, or my patients or my friends, is like, how can we raise our vibration when we've been through something challenging or hard? And these are skills that you need to cultivate when you're becoming a parent, because you're opening yourself up into a world of vulnerability and love and potential loss. And so like, these are really important skills for kind of building your parenting chops, if you will. Like, and so one thing that I do, it's just like, it's a practical thing, is I put on, I know this is backwards, and so that's obnoxious, but no, I literally have to sometimes make myself a reminder of like things that make me happy and raise my vibration, and things that are not great for me. I just started this list, and I put this on my refrigerator or on my bedroom or on my mirror. So if I'm going through a challenging time, I'm looking, I remind myself, actually, when I listen to music, it raises my vibration. It gets me out of the loops. It gets me out of the depression and the stress, which we know creates cortisol and stress hormones and negatively impacts hormones, whether you're perimenopausal like me or you're trying to get pregnant. So we're just trying to like, okay, deal with the stress. So how can I raise my vibration? Listening to music. For me, calling a friend. I call Kara right away anytime I'm stressed about anything. And sometimes it's 3 a.m. for her. And for me, I'm an extrovert. The connection, it always soothes me. Mm-hmm. What's not great for me? It's not great for me if I'm like watching the news and I'm already stressed about something, especially right now. Like, I know I'm going to have to turn that off, and I'm going to do like hug my dog, or go, sorry, here she is, she's so cute, or go on a nature walk. So anyway, it sounds so, I do this with my families all the time, and children, like having a list that you can access to remind yourself, mm-hmm. There's things like, I'm not feeling great right now. Like, I'm a 3 out of 10. I've got a lot of grief. There's things that you can do to practically help to kind of move you to the next vibrational layer.
Right. And people ask us too, you know, are there other strategies as far as like, should I be avoiding foods or eating certain foods when I'm experiencing a miscarriage and going through it? And to us, the answer is always nourish yourself as best you possibly can and take it easy on yourself. So it's, you know, don't go for the sugar comfort foods, don't go for things that cause inflammation, but really just go back to your fertility diet and really focus on nourishing yourself really, really well, because that'll help everything get back on track.
And the other thing that we see a lot with women who experience a miscarriage is self-blame.
Mhm.
Kara touched on it some, but it's fascinating how women are so awesome at blaming themselves for things. Like, it had to be me. It's because I did something. It's because of this, or it's because of that. And, you know, we can go through the risk factors, even like drinking too much caffeine or smoking cigarettes. And yet there are women who drink caffeine and smoke cigarettes and still have good pregnancies. Like, sometimes you can do all the things right and still have a miscarriage. And it can feel sometimes like a punishment. Like, some women experience that they're being punished spiritually, like it's happening for everybody out there, but for me, I keep having this issue. Or they experience it as self-blame. And we just really want to dispel both things, that you're not being punished, though it feels incredibly challenging, and that you are doing the very best you can in your life, and miscarriages happen. And the best thing to do is to take every single minute you need to grieve, and every single minute you need to heal without feeling shame or guilt. You get to take as much time as you need. Some women it's a month, some women it's a year. And then you get to do things that make you feel good and raise your vibration. And like Dr. Kerr said, you get to eat good food. You get to be in touch with good people. You get to do service for other people or feel good. You get to try to get yourself to the best feeling place, to feel sexy again, to feel passionate again about having family, so that you're starting over in your best possible place to give this entirely magical process another chance.
So one group of women that are really especially upset sometimes are women who got easily pregnant and had great pregnancies, maybe one or two, and then they're going for baby 3 or 4, and they are really upset when there's a miscarriage, and they really are like, what did I do? What's wrong with me? And so it is definitely worth keeping in mind. Just the older you are, the more likely this is to happen, and, you know, making sure nothing's really going wrong, but in reality, just taking the best care of yourself possible. And that's the best approach to do. But it's this whole thing of, you know, it was easy and now it's not. And that's a really common thing that comes up.
It is.
It just needs like a little explanation. Like, it's just the eggs are older and your body's a little bit older and maybe you're more tired or whatever. So what can you do to get some time for yourself? How can you actually schedule things you love in your life? What can you do to get yourself in the best shape possible to go back to try again?
And so if we can kind of look at it, I'm not trying to be cheesy, like everything happens for a reason, or, you know, I'm not trying to do that to you. But if you could look at it as an opening for another layer of deepening and self-care, it will actually serve you in your family journey, in your journey through being pregnant and having a labor, and then taking care of a baby, which is a marathon, and then having a family. And we need to become extreme badasses at self-care. That's what mothers have to do. And resilience and
A
grit.
lot of
Stuff
resilience
they're
needed.
talking about, you know, like resilience and grit and self-care and self-love and a sense of humor and a sense of wonder. And like, if you can take the opportunity to sort of step into that and use food as medicine, then most women have a great outcome, like Kara with her 2 beautiful kids. And she wouldn't have thought that after miscarriage number 2 or miscarriage number 3 when you get down,
Or
or
5.
miscarriage number 4 or 5.
Right.
So we're, anyway, we are excited. We're extremely passionate about the work that we do at Cultivate Fertility and trying to help you plant seeds for your happiest and healthiest family, and for you, for helping you be your best self. And so, please, you can get a lot more information about our programs and our supplements, our products, our blogs, our webinars, other webinars, especially the Raise Your Vibration webinar, which is perfect to kind of go ahead and hand in hand with this, at our website, cultivatefertility.com. And just, we welcome you to our community, and we hope this served you in some way.
Thanks,
Bye,
Hillary.
Sarah. Mwah.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.